You're entering Corsi Nation.
This is Jerome Corsi, and we have two guests back, and I'm really excited to get back on the show. We are going to be interviewing today Dmitry Kudryn, who's in Alaska, and he has a legal case, which you're going to find to be ridiculous, that he was prosecuted by the federal government and put in prison for a year for an ad that he ran on Craigslist selling a couch. This is a story of the weaponized justice and intelligence systems we have around, and this is one of the more egregious chapters. We're going to insist upon this one getting a pardon, because I want to go after the people who did this to Dmitry. And also with us is Mike Nova. How are you, Mike?
I'm very well. Thank you, Dr. Corsi, for having us. You're always amazing. We love you. You're great. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you, Dr. Corsi and Dmitry.
Well, Mike, I have these two gentlemen explain how they got to know each other, but Mike is Ukrainian, and he did a show with us for about an hour, explaining his involvement in Ukraine and his actually working with Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, in Zelensky's office. And the remarkable thing about Mike's interview was he documented the egregious amount of cocaine these people were consuming. I mean,
and overdosing. And
yeah. We don't know why Zelensky's always touching his nose. I think Mike has the explanation for it.
Sure do.
And so therefore we had a fascinating discussion. Now, you two gentlemen are both Ukrainian, and how did you get to know each other? So whoever wants to go first. Mike, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, we were a refugee family plant. My family was, so was Dmitry's, in Walla Walla, Washington, Washington State. And we grew up together, basically. Weren't super close, but we got closer as we started supporting Donald Trump together in this last election especially. And I had read through the memorandum that was written about Dmitry, and I realized how egregious this situation was. And again, I'm so excited, Dr. Corsi, that you're tackling this with us. Thank you so much for being the human that you are. And this is really important to me, that a childhood friend of mine like Dmitry, which over a Craigslist text did a year in prison. They took over $500,000 from him, and it's just ridiculous. I'm willing to put my life on the line to make sure that justice is served in this situation. So here we are.
Well, we're going to win this one. I've gotten pardons before. I participated with Sheriff Arpaio in getting a pardon in the first Trump administration. I worked with Dinesh D'Souza, extensively covered his trial, reported on it when I was a reporter with WorldNetDaily.com. He got a pardon. So this is not my first time to be down this route, and we are going to win this one. Dmitry is going to get a pardon. Now,
That's
Dmitry,
right.
how, from your side, why don't you tell your story of how you got here from Ukraine, how you got connected with Mike?
Well, Dr. Corsi, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. Mike and I met in Walla Walla, Washington. My family, I was 4 years of age, came to Walla Walla, Washington from the former Soviet Union. And we were the first family there. After our family arrived in 1989, Mike's family, his parents and siblings, arrived shortly thereafter in the early 90s. And we spent approximately 10 years in Walla Walla, Washington, just growing up and, attending a church Sunday school class and activities around the city. So it was a great time growing up in the 90s in America and in a kind of a farm country town. Amazing memories. And of course, in 99, I moved to Alaska when my family moved up back in high school, and we kind of got disconnected for a while there, but we found some common ground when we both realized how important it was for Donald Trump to be reelected as the 47th president of the United States. And we just, we did everything we could to do what we could from our side to assist with that.
Yeah, well, and I can I was up in Alaska at Dmitry's invitation, stayed his airplane hangar, in which he's got a complete like condominium built. we actually flew his airplane around Alaska. The most important thing I think we did is we attended Christmas Eve services at the church of Dmitry's church, which was a remarkably beautiful service, candlelit at the end. And
That's right.
then we had a great dinner with all the Ukrainians, and the major event in the dinner was the a little contest, like this group against this group, and it was Bible questions that we were answering. And I think the only one I really came up with was the question of who had the first submarine in the Bible. And I said, of course, that was Jonah and the whale. But these are strong Christian gentlemen with strong Christian families, and you're both U.S. citizens, correct?
Yes, Dr. Corsi. And by the way,
correct.
Yeah, that is correct. Both U.S. citizens. By the way, back to your point, it wasn't just Ukrainians that were there. There were Russians there too in Alaska with us, and we were all getting along just fine. We were all getting along just fine.
The thing that most people don't understand about Ukraine, because of our neo-Marxist Communist Democratic Party that wants to go to war with Russia ever since the Berlin Wall came down and they renounced communism, and the Democrat communists never forgave them for that. And so they don't understand that these two provinces that Putin has occupied are Russian speaking, as is Crimea. And for 1,000 years, these two provinces have been aligned with Russia. In fact, they're mostly Russian speaking people. And the Poroshenko was president before Zelensky, and Zelensky were actually sending neo-Nazi brigades because the western part of Ukraine is aligned with Germany. It was very heavily Nazi during World War II. They still have neo-Nazi brigades. Zelensky was sending these in to the two Russian provinces to kill people who wanted to be independent states. And then when Zelensky started attacking the Russian Orthodox clergy and shutting down churches, I think Putin had enough, because people don't understand Putin is very, very religious and does believe in Jesus Christ and God. And so therefore Putin has been mischaracterized. He may have been KGB, and he may have been a tough guy, but he's a tough guy who believes in Jesus Christ. And he does not want to go to war, and he doesn't want to take over Western Europe. He wants to make sure that the Russian-speaking people of Ukraine are treated as human beings with dignity, their own individual rights from God, and their own ability to be independent states if they want to be. Would you agree with that, Dmitry?
I think that is an accurate statement. I believe he just wants to protect their own interests in that part of the world without being encroached on. I know it's a very sensitive topic to a lot of those in my background, and I have family back on both sides, and I see the two sides of, there's actually people take one side and the other side, and it's really, really sad. But from my perspective here, I want peace. I want peace. Yep. I look at the two sides as two brothers, and two brothers shouldn't be fighting.
Yeah,
they should get along and fight.
And you both are very dedicated to Ukraine. I'm Italian. I'm still very dedicated, Italian and Irish. I'm still very dedicated to both those countries, but I'm an American. And you are both Americans and have strong ties here with your families and strong ties back to Ukraine from family history, relatives, etc. And the other thing I want to emphasize is that early on, as we began doing this work, when I met Mike, we really got to know each other last summer of 2024, when I spent a considerable period of time in Georgia with Mike. And Dmitry was really one of the first funders of Gods5Stones.com and wrote a substantial check to get us going, and with no ties to it whatsoever. I mean, this is something I'm doing because I believe it's correct. I do not have an agreement with Dmitry or Mike. I'm doing this because I think it's an injustice, and the injustice needs to be rectified. And we need to get the truth, because it's the truth that will set us free. And the truth of this story is a very, very big story. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you to come back from time to time and comment. But if
Yes,
you'll
sir.
kind of mute yourself there so we don't get
I
the
will.
background noise,
I
I'm going
will
to
now.
interview Dmitry about his case, okay? But you'll be back through the program. We're going to go about 45 minutes, okay? All right, thank you. Now, Dmitry, your case started, and the executive summary of your case, I'm here reading from a briefing of your case that has been prepared for the pardon attorney in the Department of Justice, and we'll get this to the pardon attorney so they can begin creating a file. But what happened to you is, to me, just should not happen in the United States of America. Now, the two things I want to cover are this is going to be called the Craigslist false couch accusations. This is the case. This case is about a false couch sold on Craigslist, which is, it's almost so ridiculous. I don't know why we're talking about it, except that it cost you a year and a half of your life in prison and continuing probation work, which is all a gross injustice that was done to you. We're going to get it corrected. Now, your background, so you were born in 1985 in Ukraine. You're the oldest of 12 siblings, and you lived with your family in Ukraine until you were 4, as you pointed out. You went to Walla Walla, Washington. Your family was the first Russian family to go to Walla Walla. And your father worked as a local coal miner in the former Soviet Union. And he worked half a mile underground for $400 a month, when the average wage in the Soviet Union at that time was $100 a month. You consider yourself fortunate. Your father was a devout Christian, an active member of the local church, and he refused to register with the Communist Party. And that goes back to the 1940s and the history with the Soviet Union, in which your grandfather was arrested, charged with the crime of being a speculator, meaning he achieved profit from his work. Under the communist system, he's arrested, stripped of his rights, and your grandfather and the entire family were shipped off to a Siberian concentration camp for hard labor. Your father, then 15, was not sent to the concentration camp. He was left on his own to fend for himself. And so therefore, your father refused to register with the Communist Party, and he refused to promise that he would not participate in religious services. And so therefore, he continued to work and to build a house for himself and his family, but because he refused to renounce his faith and pledge loyalty to the Communist Party, he began to face increasing, I guess you'd say, attacks. The KGB came to your father's house, arrested him, took him to the Soviet prison, wet, cold, rat-infested prison, and he was released from prison. Since the government took everything he had, they lost interest in him. And in 1984, he married your mother, found a way to get to America, and this is just an exciting story in terms of survival out of the Soviet Union, and it had to have been an heroic. As you learned this family history, you had to feel your grandfather and your father were heroes.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing I'd like to add, how that story continued on after my father was pretty much let go by the Communist Party. He was arrested 8 separate times and put into prison 8 separate times. They eventually burned his house down. At that point, they let him go. He actually did go back to work for a short while back in the coal mines. But sometime in the late 80s, information came out that the United States would consider citizens of the Soviet Union to be interviewed for consideration to immigrate to the United States. The requirement was you've got to show up at an embassy, which the nearest ones were located in the European countries. So when that information became available, my dad didn't need to hear anything further. He took my mother. There was 2 brothers at the time, 3 kids, packed all of our belongings. There was 12 suitcases, approximately $600 of earnings, and he bought a ticket from Moscow, Russia to Vienna, Austria. Now, one of the rules at the time to exit the Soviet Union, you had to have a passport. Well, those were only issued to high-ranking people within the communist system, typically KGB agents. So we had no documents whatsoever to legally cross that border. We're a Christian family, God-fearing family, and God really was watching over us. We boarded that train, not knowing what's going to happen. Typically about 2-3 stops prior to leaving the country, you would get boarded, and you're trained by the KGB guards, and they would go through and start checking documents. And that started to take place. And as they approached our carriage, they walked past our entire family like we weren't there. I really believe their eyes were shielded. They didn't see us. They walked right past. A couple stops later, we were outside the Soviet Union, in the European country, and we stopped in Vienna, Austria. We spent about 2 weeks there and were unsuccessful in obtaining an interview at the U.S. Embassy there. So we carried on to Italy, Rome, Italy, where we arrived 2 weeks later. And that process to get an interview took about 2.5 months. I was 4 years of age, but it's something I'll never forget. After 2.5 months of kind of going through the process, filing the papers and waiting for the call, my parents did receive that call that they were granted an interview, and I still remember this to this day, us sitting in the embassy, speaking with the immigration officer, retelling the story of why we would like to start a new life in America, and talked about the KGB tactics, the imprisonment, why my family would not agree to participate in that communist system. The immigration officer said very clearly, we don't do things this way in America. And he took like a pause and reached back behind his big desk and pulled out a stamp and just went across the 5 applications on his desk and just boom, 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 and said, "Welcome to the United States of America." That's how our American story started. A church sponsored us several weeks later, and we ended up in Walla Walla, Washington, which we lived there for 10 years through 1999. My father worked at just an irrigation company, never spent a day on any kind of public assistance, didn't want to participate in that, went straight to work and just instilled in us and the whole family just the values of hard work, and really instilled in us, how do we become an asset, an income producing asset for this country. He felt that we were invested in as an immigrant family and that we needed to give back, make sure that our presence here brought something good to this country versus take away from it. That's how we started here in America. So we got to see that beautiful side of America of, legal immigration, giving us a chance, and I'll forever be grateful for that opportunity. Fast forward, 99, moved to Alaska. I went to school to be an airline pilot, got my pilot's licenses, got a job, graduated, flew commercially for 7 years for the airlines across America, coast to coast. And in 2008-9, the recession hit. And that was a time when I had just started my family, and I was concerned about my income, losing my paycheck. So I basically went out and said, "Hey, I'm going to test myself to see if I can find ways to supplement my income as being an entrepreneur."
Okay, and you married your beautiful wife in 2005, and you have 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls, and the youngest is what now, 1 year old?
1 year, 1 years of age.
She can sure crawl around that house all right, and she's got a great sense of humor. She can't quite yet talk, but she knows what's funny.
Yes.
And she is clearly the one who rules the roost, is the youngest girl of 5 children. So a beautiful family, and I did enjoy greatly spending time with you. Now, you started then, you went into you founded a consumer electronics company and sold accessories for phones and electronics. And between 2010 and 2024, you paid approximately $2 million in personal taxes, and your businesses paid about $2.5 million to the United States Treasury. So you certainly have been productive, and you certainly have produced a return for the opportunity that it sounds to me like God granted you and the United States of America agreed to.
I tend to think the same. I agree. I've done as I could, and God has blessed me with success and a beautiful family, 5 children, and I'm very thankful for that. To truly being an asset, I feel like I've given back more than maybe others in my same category to this great country.
And you run a company now called Alaska Doors, and I had a brochure in the office I was using in the condominium in the hangar, the airplane hangar, which, by the way, was extremely comfortable. That was luxurious by any standards. And these doors are remarkable. I mean, these doors are rock solid for the Alaskan weather. I said, you probably have this business all across the United States someday. You could have Alaska doors, you can have Oklahoma doors, you can have all the, it's just a wonderful concept. And everybody I met, I attended the Christmas party in your hangar. I think you have films of me singing Jingle Bells. And we had a great time. It was a really family-oriented, and you've run your company as a family-oriented enterprise and Christian principles, and you have great employees. I was very, very impressed with the quality of your employees and the standards of your company, which I think are exceptional.
Well, thank you for that. We really enjoyed having you here during our Christmas party.
Yeah, it was terrific. I mean, I've been in Alaska many times, but I've never enjoyed it as much as I did this last time. Now, your trouble started in 2016, and you had a Homeland Security memorandum that initiated an investigation into you when a U.S. Customs and Border Control notified Homeland Security that inbound shipments of electronics had been misclassified or are undervalued. And then there's a report from a Homeland Security report investigation of this agent Wasson, W-A-U-S-O-N. However, the Department of Homeland Security opened its file on you in 2013, so you didn't get this report until 2018. So there's the 2 dates of the Homeland Security investigation. The discrepancy in the dates, both assigned to the same agent, is unexplained. And of course, that's one of the many bizarre factors of this case. What happened to the electronics investigation?
Well, I started a business buying and selling, and one of the businesses initially was just to buy name brand products, and we shipped them overseas to Europe and sold them at a profit on the Amazons and eBays of the world at that time. We would buy something for $100 and sell it for 100 pounds. We would have some profit in the exchange of currencies. That business eventually received a lot of competition. And it started to produce less and less profit. So we got to the point where we started our own company to produce protective cases, chargers, cables for the same electronics that we had initially started to sell. That was in 2014. The revenues of the business selling the name brand electronics were very high. They were very high, and those numbers attracted the attention of the Homeland Security investigation team in Alaska, and they had started to investigate to see, I must be doing something wrong for a business to be generating the numbers we were generating during those years. In 2014, we started.
I want to stop at that point because they were jealous you were making money. Now, I thought this is a capitalist state. I thought it was okay to make money. But because you're Ukrainian, you're making money, you're dealing with China. So our Homeland Security thinks that on no other basis thinks that's a basis to open up an investigation. They're prying now into, for all they know, a legitimate business, because why are you making all this money working with China? So you have to be doing something wrong. Now that's a weaponized department. It's attacking someone who's successful. It's like a shakedown operation. Okay, yes. Now in 2012, you and your partner were traveling from China to Seattle. And in Seattle, the customs agents seized all of your electronics. And then they they informed you that you were part of a child pornography investigation, and which seems to me to be a pretext to steal your property. I mean, having now spent time with you and your family, I can't imagine, if you're interested in child pornography, you're the biggest con man on the face of the earth, because I see no indication of it at all. You're a family man. You're faithful to your wife. You're faithful to your family. You're a good Christian.
Yeah, I don't think they could have taken my laptop without giving you a reason. They have to have like a probable cause. And to be honest, I didn't think really anything of it. I didn't suspect that they were investigating my businesses at the time. I was pretty naive, just like, okay, you want to look at my laptop, then I have no choice. They took it and they returned it back a couple of months later from what I remember back from 2012. But yeah, that was their probable cause. Maybe that was their maybe suspicion, or what they used at least, to take my electronics and hopefully find and uncover things that I maybe was doing illegally, according to them. That's
we call that a fishing expedition.
Fishing, yes,
and
or a witch hunt, maybe.
And under the terms of the Fourth Amendment, that they committed a crime doing that, because you cannot conduct a fishing evidence without probable cause. There's no reason to have probable cause to suspect that you were engaged in child pornography. It's a complete pretext. They hoped to find something, and this was the best they could think of. Now, that's further buttressed by the fact that nothing happened in 2012. I mean, they didn't bring forth any indictments. So, as far as you know, that was just an incident that occurred. Of course, I doubt they gave you your property back. Did they?
Actually, they did. They returned back my laptop, surprisingly. They clearly went through it. I don't think they clearly didn't find what they were looking for. So that was—
How about the electronics?
To be the end of it. The electronics, it was mostly my laptop. I believe I had a thumb drive or a hard drive with.
So it wasn't business inventory they seized.
No, it was my personal device.
Okay, so they're coming after you personally, under the pretext that your business had to be suspicious, and they were going to find child pornography. This is an entirely a weaponized Department of Homeland Security investigation, which is inherently illegal and violated your Fourth Amendment rights as a citizen. Should never have been done. Okay, now 2018 then, so 6 years later, you're listed in a government interest, and the report's title was Purchase of Sofa Sets from Dmitry Kudryn. Okay, so now you've committed a crime with sofas, and that's what they're alleging. And they say that you had advertised couches as having been manufactured in Italy, when the leather that was the predominant part of the couch was manufactured in Italy, but the couches were assembled in China. So it's an absurd nature of this alleged offense, as you put it in Craigslist, as an Italian couch. In fact, I believe in the bedroom where I was sleeping, you had the couch in the corner. I think that was the famous illegal couch.
That's the one they seized. And I'll share a little bit more information. How did we get to couches? Since 2012, when this whole thing started, I really was very naive to not really realize that something was going on behind the scenes. And for all those years through 2018, they were actually looking for any way I was doing something illegal. They were looking for crimes in my life during that period of time. And approximately 4 years and 9 months after they had started their investigation on me, they created this Couchgate case, where they came—
I like that, Couchgate. This is Couchgate.
Couchgate. They came and bought the set from me. Now, why was I selling a sofa set? It's not really part of my business. We produce consumer electronic accessories, and we ship most of them to the West Coast, California, and across America. Every now and again, we need to have a shipment come into Alaska, and Alaska shipping is far more expensive than it is to the West Coast. So I was at a trade show in China in roughly 2015 or so, and my shipments would come in on these pallets, and they would leave about 4 feet of space above the inventory of our main products. I'm like, well, maybe I could find something light to fit in there and I can gain back approximately $10,000 of extra expense of bringing it to Alaska versus leaving it in the lower 48 states. So I found a furniture factory, said, here's what I want. Can you fit these in? I'll buy whatever you can fit in here, and I should be able to sell them in Alaska for a small markup and gain back those expenses. So that's what I did. I did that, and it worked out fairly well. I'd sell maybe one set a month, two a month in a little neighboring office next to my main office. And I would recover roughly about $900 of profit in a sale from every single set, and I would balance out the equation of being in Alaska and shipping to us here, and still being competitive in the space that I was. So my advertisement in the sofa Couchgate case, it said 3-piece, comma, Italian leather, comma, sofa set. Never did I write where it was made. Very rarely did anybody ask about that. But the word Italian, like you had stated, defined the type of leather in the product, not where it was made. And around those two words, the entire case was built. The agent came in, called me one day, said, hey, I saw your ad, I'd like to come by, take a look at it. I'm like, okay, no problem, come by, it's here at my office. And I'm, doing my normal business. And he comes over. So I go over there and start listening to his questions. And why are you selling it? Where'd you get it? Kind of the background story. And his questions were coming at a pretty fast pace, to where he came to the Italian part, and his question was phrased in a way that, in my mind, I'm talking about the type of leather, but he was asking where it was made, and I gave him the wrong answer. After that point, he bought the set, and then said that every set that I had sold, I had told people that was made in Italy when it's actually made in China, where the whole case at that point was created, and onwards we went.
Well, that reminds me of the kind of setup that was done by the Department of Justice to General Flynn, where they came over to talk about some of the conversations with, I believe, Lavrov, a foreign minister in Russia, and Flynn was unsuspecting. And of course, they were then trying to get him to say something which they could use for the Russian collusion hoax, but it was a setup. And so this was a setup too. And a car is meant for a U.S. automobile manufacturer under the U.S. automobile national brand of that automobile manufacturer assembles a car in Mexico. It doesn't make it a Mexican car. It's still a U.S. car. Okay, so you use Italian products, Italian leather, which is the selling point of the couches, and you have it assembled in China. It doesn't make it a Chinese couch. It makes it a Italian couch manufactured in China or assembled in China. Okay, China did not produce the leather. Okay, so now, when you get into this, what the Homeland Security investigations in Anchorage, Alaska, started investigating suspicious financial activity, money laundering, trafficking counterfeit goods, smuggling, and export by Dmitry Kudryn and his family and his company, his family members and associates. Now, why? Well, you'd been successful. So, quote, the large flow of currency and financial activity appear to be inconsistent with the potential profit of his electronics business. In other words, Homeland Security, the basis of people who probably had non-existent, never been in business themselves. These are government agents. They determined your company was too profitable. And so then when you finally realized that they were investigating you, and of course, you're here in the United States, you came to the United States because you believed, as they said in Italy, we don't operate that way, that you weren't dealing with the KGB. And so you didn't have any inherent reason to be suspicious. You were trying to be helpful to these government agents. You didn't know what they were investigating, but you were trying to do the right thing and answer their questions and tell them the truth. But eventually you had to figure out that what went on with your grandfather, the bogus investigation the KGB came up with, and his arrest and imprisonment for speculation. Now here you're in the United States and you're getting basically punished for a successful business that you founded, paid taxes on, ran legitimately, and all these government agents wanted to do was punish you for your success. That's about how I read the case.
You're absolutely right. They raided my offices in May of 2018 and spent the bulk of the day in the office looking around. They thought they were going to uncover some operation that was happening inside the building that was illegal. They had been working almost 5 years to gain any form of indictment, and I think they were running out of time. I believe there's a certain amount of time that they have to complete things in, and they were running out of time. So instead of closing an investigation and saying, hey, this person actually is innocent, hasn't completed any crimes after many, many years and years of grand jury sessions of trying to sell them whatever they were trying to go after and secure an indictment. The system was actually working for a lot of years. And finally, at one point where they made this Couchgate case, they received their indictment. They had said that I had defrauded people by selling them the sofa set, advertising correctly through Craigslist, and they simply raided the building. They went through, I couldn't believe it when they walked in and showed me, like, I'm just reading my name. It says United States of America versus Dmitry Kudryn. That is a very scary thing to read on a piece of paper. And I never believed that this country would allow such things to take place in the justice system. I believe that it was black and white. If you're innocent and you're investigated, they're going to send you home. But this agent clearly told in my face, Dmitry, we know you're a stubborn person. We don't care what it is, but we've got to win. If you don't give this to us, we're going to continue to dig until we find something. Initially, I didn't really believe him. I'm like, no, there's no way this could be the case. This is nonsense. But roughly a month later, after the case started, I found that is exactly the truth, and that is exactly what they do, and that was normal for them.
I can affirm this. They did the same thing to me when they wanted to imprison me on the Mueller investigation. They decided they were going to put me in prison, and they didn't care if they had a case. They made one up. Okay, and I want to point this out too, that this Department of Homeland Security Special Agent Ty Bishop purchased the couch from you, and on January 24th, 2016, the other agent, this Wasson, W-A-U-S-O-N, had gotten permission to get $2,500 for the purchase of a couch from you. There's a memo, Homeland Security in 2016, 24th of January, that documents that. The couch was not bought until February 2018, over 2 years later. And in January 2016, the investigators argued that the $2,500 for the undercover couch was, quote, mission critical. Their transparent bait and switch was to gain access to your warehouse using Couchgate as the way to generate information about the continued investigation of your sale of electronics, in which they hope to find a real crime. All they ended up with was that you'd advertise this 3-piece furniture sets made up of Italian leather, fine Italian leather. Well, having sat in the chair, I can attest to you, it's good Italian leather. And that leather was, I've been to Italy more times than I can remember, and that leather was not manufactured in China, I guarantee you. There's no way that was Chinese leather. And so, what they did was they were in search of a crime.
Yes.
And they were willing to create a crime in order to have an indictment. Now, these agents have violated so many federal laws, I can't begin to count them. Okay, this is criminal activity. These two agents now have committed crimes. And if the statute of limitations not done, I'm going to bring this to Pam Bondi and to Kash Patel and demand an investigation of those agents.
They were very upfront about it. They weren't trying to hide. They said, hey, we're going to win. We need an easy win. If you fight us, we'll continue to dig until we find something. And, they followed up a month later. This is a very long story, but they followed up a month later with a seizure from another completely different business, a home building business that I had. And they took $586,000 out of a bank account one day, just vanished. And then they called me in, hey, we need to sit down and talk. Once I saw them do that, initially my mentality was, am I innocent or guilty? I'm like, no, I'm absolutely not guilty. And once I saw them do that, it really created a shift in my mind. I could really understand that the odds of me beating the government with my resources were very slim. And my thinking shifted to, how do I lose less? It was very obvious to me that I was not going to beat him, simply based on my own assessment of what I knew at that time. In hindsight, maybe I would have done something different. It was just kind of like fighting a grizzly bear with your bare hands. You can't win that. So it's not a smart move to be entering a fight. in that with that kind of a disadvantage. So at that point, they presented to me a plea agreement and said, if you take responsibility for Couchgate, then we will leave you alone, your family alone, my employees alone. They were harassing everybody during this process, causing a lot of stress on my business, on my employees, and put me in a position to where this was the path of losing less. How do I remain standing on the and not lose everything? What would happen if I beat them in court, spent all my money that I had, and somehow won in the end? How is that a win? I have nothing. To me, that's really a loss. So to me, I had to sign that paper and take responsibility for Couchgate, which I absolutely never advertised the sofa sets as being made in Italy or China. Everything was made in China. Rarely was that ever even brought up. Never was advertised, but it was just a means to an end. That witch hunt was about 5 years in the making, and they had to find a way to close it. They were hoping to find some big explosion in the end of my warehouse that would create this enormous case. They didn't. And instead of doing the honorable thing of saying, okay, this person passed our 5-year test, they did not.
Well, President Trump has just signed a executive order making this kind of criminal activity on the part of Justice Departments, regardless of agency, criminal. They're not allowed to do this any longer. They're not allowed to create a crime and offer you a plea deal in order not to challenge them in court or put you in a position of losing all your money, your life, your livelihood, possibly being in prison for the rest of your life if you don't bend to their criminal fabrication of a crime that was never committed. So the criminals are the Department of Homeland Security. And I intend to find out who these agents are, who supervised them, under what authority they operated, how many more of them there are, and we'll be talking to Mr. Elon Musk about this activity never being allowed to get in the Department of Homeland Security. Homeland Security operates this way. We don't need the Department of Homeland Security. Now, in the limited time we've got, I want to cover a couple more points, and this is just the first of many interviews we're going to do. I want people to understand the depth of your support for Donald Trump, the importance of your business in Alaska, the ability to work with Donald Trump even on energy in Alaska, your contacts up there. I want to continue to have you have a productive life in which you can contribute to the advancement of building God's kingdom here on earth and providing abundance, as God told us, go forth and multiply, and have this blemish removed from your record. We are going to accomplish this. We're going to win this one. Okay, now, what I want to make absolutely clear is that in the process of all this, you were actually raided. Your office was raided. You were handcuffed. You were taken away and indicted.
Yes.
And this was in front of your workers, your employees. Ultimately, your family had to know you were imprisoned and indicted. They ruined your life. They did everything they could to make you a public embarrassment and to create a blemish on your life and career that would never be able to be erased. Is that correct?
That is a true statement. They arrested me, put me in prison, arraigned me the next day, stripped me of all my local rights, took my passport. I became a flight risk. There's a lot more, and we could cover those details in future interviews to dig into this case piece by piece. But that is correct, Dr. Corsi.
Yeah, at your bail hearing, you had to post a $600,000 secured bond that denied you the opportunity to leave Alaska without prior permission of the court. Is that correct?
That is correct. I needed to take a trip to Germany 2 weeks after the indictment, and that was the first battle of this case, is I've got to go do that at a big trade show that I had spent a lot of money for. We initially won that case. A judge had been filling in out of the state of Washington for a local judge. Well, he said the government had absolutely no good cause to hold me back and order them to return my passport. Of course, they did a 24-hour stay, brought in the judge that oversaw this case, and she completely reversed the decision, canceling the trip for me and costing me a tremendous amount of lost opportunity and lost income just from that one case. That was how this case started.
Did the government ever return your $500,000?
They did not. $586,000 has gone to this day, and that was signed away with my plea agreement. They had attached all of that. There was about a page of sofa stuff and about 30 pages of all the things they had hoped would create cases against me, and they had just very conveniently bunched that together, and maybe that made them feel a little better that at least there's a little bit of money involved in this case. to give them a little bit of satisfaction of 5 years of hard work of looking for something in my life unsuccessfully. Maybe that was part of it, but that money's gone.
And what year did they what year did they steal that money from you?
That was approximately the end of June of 2018 is when they came and took that money.
Well, I think they should return that money to you plus interest and damages. And so therefore, I think you've got a major suit against them for criminal misimprisonment and confiscation of assets that they had no right to do. These two criminals, in fact, all the criminals involved in this case need to go to jail.
I hope so. You know, where I grew up, where I was born, I should say not grow up, but where I was born, there's a thing called criminals within the law. And that doesn't surprise anybody from where I come from. And I couldn't find a better term for these people as criminals within the law. Are they all that way? I don't think so, but the ones that I dealt with easily for me fall into that category. You know, there's a famous quote out there that says, you know, back in the KGB communist days where they say, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. Right. And to me, I was the man and he was going to find a crime or manufacture a crime. And that's exactly what he did.
Well, I'm up against a hard break. I want to bring Mike back in. I apologize on behalf of the American people, the American government, that our criminals in the Department of Homeland Security committed these crimes at your expense, especially given your history, given what you've done for your family, what you've done for the nation. Your support of God's Five Stones is going to be instrumental in restoring voting rights to the American people. We are going to win that case. I'm working with Peter Ticktin, Ticktin, the president's attorney, and we have a strategy here to make sure that the states which have been penetrated by criminal agents and their voter registration files are brought to justice. We're going to, and your funding initially was instrumental in getting us established, and that I think is, again, despite all the injustice done to you, is a testament to your Christian beliefs, your Christian life, and your devotion to the United States of America and to Donald Trump, and I commend you for that.
Thank you, Doctor.
Michael, any final comments here?
I really appreciate the both of you. I honor the both of you. I think this is great work that we're doing and building America out further by bringing up things like this. I wish you guys the best day. To all the viewers, to just have an amazing day, amazing week, and I can't wait to speak with you all again soon.
Well, Dmitry, if you ever set up a defense fund or whatever, we're going to advertise people contributing to it, and I encourage you to do that, because we'll publicize it here, and you will get contributions. Okay, so by the time we do our next interview, I'd like you to have a defense fund in place, and then we can begin to get that funded so you have some resources to fight these demons and beat them. They need to be sent back to hell where they came from.
Thank you for that suggestion, Dr. Corsi. I really appreciate you taking time to hear my story and to bring attention to it. I really hope that, you know, one thing I do know is the truth will eventually come out. It always does. It comes out on God's time, not necessarily on my time. And it's been a lot of years now since this whole case has been over. It's behind me. It's in the rearview mirror. I've recovered from it, thankfully. And you know, I've lived in this community for 26 years, and I'm very thankful that my reputation prior to this case was strong enough to carry me through and allow me to get back up on my feet, build a brand new company, employ almost 40 people now. I'm very proud of what we're doing, and it's contributing to the local economy, to Alaska, employing people, and to America. So couldn't be more excited for the next 4 years with the president's policy, all the very fast actions that he's implementing. I very much so am participating in a lot of that. I have a huge manufacturing experience in China, and I'm very excited at bringing the factory home. I'm actually working on that as we speak. I couldn't be more excited about it. It's the best time ever, and why not? I have no loyalty to China, and if there's an opportunity, which is now, to bring it home, I'm jumping all in.
Well, I want to thank you, and I want to thank Mike for introducing me to you and bringing this case forward. God bless you both, gentlemen. We're doing God's work here, and we will win.
Yes, sir.
Amen. Amen to that.
Amen.
Okay, Dr. Jerome Corsi, this is CorsiNation.com, and the end, God always wins. God's going to make sure that Dmitry gets fully justified and compensated massively for the injustice done to him. We're doing podcasts every weekday. Thank you for joining us. Please like this and pass it on to others. God bless.
God bless.
God bless.